Hello, everybody. It looks like we're live. Let's see. Yep, we got it. So, welcome to another installment of your favorite and my favorite, the Tales of the Nakshatra Gods. How do I know it's your favorite? Because we did a poll on my community tab, and we found out that it's your favorite. So that's cool, because I really like it too. So now we're going to start a new section in this book here. Let me show you the book. We're talking about this book. This is my book. It is, let's see, I got to sit differently so that you can see my face. It is the Nakshatra, the Authentic Art of Vedic Astrology. And we've been reading from the second half of the book, which is about the gods of the Nakshatras, because it is so important to understand the gods of the Nakshatras, because the gods are the ones who live in the Nakshatras, the constellations, and give the constellation the meaning, the symbolism, the energy that it has. If you know the god of the nakshatra, you already know like 60 or 70% of what you need to know about the nakshatra, especially if you're a good thinker. So, that's why I included this bit about nakshatra gods at the end of this book. The first half of the book is translation of Taittiriya Brahmana's Nakshatra Sutra, which is amazing. And I will be doing a course on that in November and December. In November and December, I'm going to set aside 6 weeks to do 3 courses, one of which is going to be another Nakshatra Sutra course. So keep your eyes peeled for that. So now we talked about a lot of gods, and now I want to get to the topic of today's session, which is the Hindu Trinity, the 3 gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So let's see what I got for you here in the book. All right, so I'll just start reading. Right, so I think the first question about glasses on or off. The first question about the Hindu Trinity is, well, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Hindu Trinity, man, that stuff is big. Like, that's the biggest thing. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Why did we hear all this stuff about Pushan and Brihaspati and Ajaikapat? Nagas, okay, they're a little famous. All these like weird things, and we didn't hear much about Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva at all. So that's the first thing that I want to talk about today. Why are they not bigger? So let's just start reading. The tale of the Nakshatra divinities began with Varuna. Gosh, I can even remember actually those first episodes when we were talking initially about who Varuna is and all that. So the tales of the Nakshatra gods began with Varuna and revolved mostly around Indra. Right? Most of the stuff that we've been talking about in this whole series has been about Indra and Varuna. And then after that was done, we talked about the Adityas, or Indra's 7 important brothers, right? But when you talk about Hinduism, I say, yet when we hear about Hinduism, we are almost always told it is led by an Indian Trinity or a Hindu Trinity, right? Composed of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So, if these 3, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, are so important in Hinduism, why don't they play a bigger role in the tales of the Nakshatra? You know what I'm saying? You're on the same page with me with my question here? These guys are supposed to be like really important in Hindu thinking. So why are they kind of absent so far, and everything's been mostly about Indra and Varuna? So let's see why. Here's what I say. The first thing that you need to know is that Vedic culture isn't monolithic. And that's a big difference between Vedic culture and modern culture, Western culture, and Christian culture, or Western in general. is that modern Western Christian, Judeo-Christian, Islamic influenced thinking tends to be that the more something is mono or singular, the better it is. And the more things are uniform and the same, the better. But the Vedic worldview is quite different. The Vedic worldview is the more pluralized something is, the more real, the more realistic. And certainly everything has one underlying fundamental singular unifying principle. But that one singular unifying principle in everything manifests in infinite number of ways. So one important thing is, if you just take a class on Hinduism and someone tells you Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva are the chief three gods, and you think you understand Hinduism, then you really don't understand anything. And actually, if you sit there in school for 10 years and try to study Hinduism, you still don't really understand it that well. Because it's very, very multifaceted. So there's space in Hinduism for points of view in which Vishnu and Shiva are like unimportant. And Indra is everything. Or there's space for where the Varuna is everything, or where the Nagas are everything, depending on who you are and what your approach is. Okay? So do you get that part? It's a very important thing to understand that Vedic culture doesn't value monolithicness, does not try to make everybody be the same, doesn't present the point of view that this is the way it is, and that's the only way it is, and everybody only sees it that way. Okay? That part's clear. Then I'll explain the next thing. Okay. The next thing is, although there's this, like, Vedic thought is this gigantic spectrum of range of things. However, you can divide it and categorize it. Okay, you can categorize it into similar things, similarities. So basically, you can split the Vedic way of thinking into two groups. Okay, and there's two schools, we're going to call them two Vedic schools, two schools of thought about the Vedas are called Purva and Uttara. And guess what, people? You're familiar with those terms, right? Because you know Purva Bhadrapada, Uttara Bhadrapada, Purva Palguni, Uttara Palguni, Purva Shada, Uttara Shada. So you're familiar with the word Purva and Uttara. You know what it means? What does Purva really mean? Purva really means, let me see. I'll give you guys a chance. Get the lag out here. Hey, Vishal. East and West, no. Before. Purva means before, and Uttara means after. First and later. First one, and then the progressed one. Okay. Before and after, or Purva it came first, and Uttara developed later. That's what the meaning is. So why East and West? There's a reason for that too, because the East can be called Purva because it's the first direction the sun rises there. Okay, so that's why it can be called Pratima, or kinds of words like that indicate first. Okay. All right, so there are two categories of Vedic thought. There's two Vedic schools. One is called the Purva school, which means this is the initial way. And the other one is called the Uttara school, which means this is the later development. So you can think of it historically. Some people take it as literally historically, that Purva Mimamsa, Purva Vedanta, which is called Purva Mimamsa, was the first way that people thought of the Vedas, and that later on in history, the Uttara, that ways of thinking about the Vedas developed. Or maybe that's true, maybe it's not true. I don't personally think it's true. You can just take it that Purva means this is the first way that you approach the Vedas. And then after you have that under your belt, you can start to approach the Veda in Uttara, in a higher way. Okay? So the difference, there's let me explain to you the difference between Purva and Uttara approaches to Veda. The initial, so let's call Purva initial and we'll call Uttara ultimate. Actually, it's kind of cognate, right? Uttara and ultimate. So the initial themes of the Vedas are mostly about karma, and the Uttara themes of the Vedas are mostly about Jnana. So what's karma and Jnana? Karma means actions, and Jnana means knowledge. But again, don't sell yourself short on these translations, right? So karma means actions. It's going to mean ceremonies, rituals, because the rituals are specific actions that you do to get specific results. So in the Purva approach to the Vedas, it's very focused on karma, which means what am I supposed to do? What am I not supposed to do? What kind of actions should I do when? And what kind of actions shouldn't I do when? That's called the Vidhi and then the shade in the Veda. Then the ultimate, or the Uttara way of seeing the Vedas is more about Jnana, which is more about Jnana doesn't, you can translate it as knowledge, but Jnana means consciousness or perception. So how can I perceive reality accurately? Is the higher reason, or the higher interpretation of the Vedas, the higher reason for studying the Vedas is to understand that. What's the correct perception of reality? What's the correct perception of the universe? If you understand that, you already got your actions right. Because if you understand what a thing really is, you use it the right way. If you use the thing the right way, you may or may not know what it really is. But using it the right way will help you learn what it is, right? That's why it comes first. So, really, the true understanding of Purva and Uttara Darshan of the Veda is not that it's historically one came first and then another came later, but it's that in each individual, the person will first have a Purva approach to the Veda and later have a Uttara approach. In other words, the first thing that you want to get straight in your life is, what am I supposed to be doing? What do I do? Actions. And the second thing you get right is why. After you get it's like it's a higher thing. It's a higher concern is why. What do these things mean? Like that. Okay? So you'll find in Vedic culture that you can split or categorize all the millions of different ways that people think about life. You can split it into these two categories. Some of these people are focused on what we're supposed to do and not do, and the other people are focused on what we're supposed to see and not see, how we're supposed to understand and not understand. Okay? So the understanding one is called the Uttara Vedanta. It's also called Vedanta, right? Which means Uttara. And the first one is called Mimamsa, actually. Purva Mimamsa. You got that? So in other words, not everybody is reading the Vedas to understand philosophy. And you can't even say, well, see this book here, this is Uttara. Rarely you can. Rarely can you do that. Usually you can't say, like, look, this Rig Veda here, this is Purva Vedanta. And this Svetashvatara Upanishad, this is Uttara. Because the Svetashvatara Upanishad is also going to have some karma in it and some rituals in it. And the Rig Veda is also going to have philosophy in it. So you can't, it's not really like here, these books that were written first were Purva Veda and the ones that are written later are Uttara Veda. It's that there's two ways of understanding the same stuff. There's two, not just ways, but there's two interests in understanding the Veda. One interest is about the karma of the thing, which means like what's going on. And the other interest is the jnana of it. What is really at the root of it? What is it really? Okay. I hope you're following. Any questions? Yeah, it's totally possible to understand the Veda now, but you have to do it in the same way that you would ever do it, which is through sadhana and discipline and study, careful study with a teacher. Shanti, see you later. Shanti, see you later. Good. All right, we might talk about gunas later when we talk about this Trinity. But for now, let's get on. Now think about astrology. So we got this thing called astrology, which is called Jyotish, right? Jyotish is an anga, or kind of like an appendage, or like my arm is an anga of my body. So Jyotish is an anga of the Purva Veda. It's an anga of the karmic, we can call it a section, or the karmic school of Vedic understanding. So let me explain why. Astrology plays a significant role in the initial Purva school, for it enables us, this is why, for astrology enables us to determine when we should perform certain actions and when we should not. This is what astrology is used for, Vedically, to know when you should do what you should do. And this is what we use it for today, even, believe it or not. What should I do? What kind of career should I have? Blah, blah, blah. And when should I do it? So it's still a basic thing. It's all about the karmic aspect of life. Now, on the other hand, Jyotish, right? It plays little or no role in the Uttara School. So these people that are really into the Karma Darshan, the Purva Darshan, they're really into astrology. And they are very obsessed with it, and they get it's all important to them. And the people that are into the Uttara Darshan, they almost never even talk about astrology. So it's very interesting. So Jyotish plays little or no role in the ultimate Uttara school because that school is relatively uninvolved with rituals and actions. It's more about perception and mental things, intellectual things. Okay? Now this explains why the gods of the Nakshatras are the gods that we spent all this time talking about, and not Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Now, of course, I'm going to spend 2 or 3 more sessions talking to you about how Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are present in the Nakshatras. But the majority of the gods that we're talking about and goddesses that we're talking about are other gods, right? And there's no really clear... I can show you how there is a special place given to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, but it's something that I can show you. It's not like it's really obvious and clear. There's no real clear, obvious favoritism or speciality given to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. There just seem to be 3 of the 27 gods, which is exactly how the Purva Vedanta school treats Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Almost. The way that they are treated in Nakshatras is exactly the way the Purva school treats Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So that's why. This is why the gods of Jyotish are mainly those that the Purva school considers important. What kind of gods does the Purva school consider important? Well, the Purva school is all about actions and results. So they consider the gods who fulfill your desires and grant your blessings to be important. What kind of desires and blessings? The ordinary ones in the practical level. That's what Purva Vedanta is about. Purva Vedanta is about how can you be healthy? How can you have a nice long life? How can you have healthy children? How can you raise good children? How can you have a good society? How can you have good sex? How can you have good music? How can you have good cooking? That's what the Veda is about when you study it from a Purva point of view. And so there's all these gods, a god of sex, a god of marriage, a god of this, a god of that, a god of rain, a god of grain. Yeah, because that's what we're interested in here. So it's very, very practical, actually. It's very revealing. Like, look, there's, especially if you come from like a Hare Krishna background, you'll be like, wait, I thought Krishna was like everything. And there's not even one mention of Krishna in the Nakshatras. That's right, folks, because we're not talking Bhakti Darshan, we're not even talking Jnana Darshan, we're talking Karma Darshan. And we're interested in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And you guys want to say that Jyotish is a great, important part of your journey of self-discovery. And I know that it is for you. But from the Vedic point of view, these people had way better tools for self-realization than just getting astrology readings. So they would actually use astrology just for simple things like, when should I get married? When would be the best time to feed my child for the first time? Stuff like that. So the gods connected with Jyotish aren't really these really philosophically important gods, but they're the more practical gods. Make sense? Look, there's somebody in the chat named Greedy Rick. And Greedy Rick wants to know, shouldn't we just do whatever we want? You should do whatever you want if what you want is really good for everybody. But if you're not on that level, but if you have ignorance, which is where you think that your self-interest is separate from my self-interest, then you better not do whatever you want. Because whatever you want is going to cause harm, and therefore you're also going to get a backlash of harm. So, and Greedy Rick, I just did an interview with Levi Kostin, and he's going to put it up there. So go see it, because we talked all about this, about how it's fatalism and astrology and all that. We're not going to get off track with that, though. Okay. So let's see. We're talking about these gods. Great. Thus, the gods of Jyotish are mainly those that the Purva school considers important, which are those who fulfill the desires and grant the blessings that ordinary people seek on a practical level. So see, so if you're listening carefully, you'll see I'm not talking about fatalism. The Vedic concept of Jyotish was, hey man, I want a nice car. Now, what do I do to get a good car? And in the old days, it wouldn't be like, well, go work at 7-Eleven and make enough money to buy a car. In the old days, it would be, you need blessings from this god and that god, and it's going to cause you to get these grains and those grains, and you can trade this and that to get this car. Right? So that's what Jyotish was about in the old days. But see, the basic thing is, where Jyotish is starting from is what you want to do. And it's trying to help you figure out how to be successful with what you want. That's what the Veda, Purva, Darshan of the Veda and Jyotish is actually trying to do. It's trying to help people be successful in what they want to do. It's not trying to tell you what you can't do. It's trying to tell you how you can be the most successful in what you want to do. And that's why the gods of Jyotish are those that give you marriage, sex, career, wealth, fame, power, prestige, money. Yeah? Now, Uttara School, let's talk about that. Uttara School is a very different flavor. So that's why you can cleanly categorize the two schools of thought. They have very different flavor. The Uttara School is the one that focuses mostly on Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And as time went on, it became more famous than the Purva school. Not because people are like not in Kali Yuga and they're becoming spiritually involved, but because science takes over. Because if you want a car, then you can go work at 7-Eleven. What are you talking about? Worship Indra. So science and practicality takes over. People don't feel the need Now, this is very important. People do need it, but they don't recognize that they need it. We need it. And that's why people are not particularly happy anymore, because they're not in communion with the will of the gods. But the reason why Purva Vedanta becomes less important is that gradually other ways of thinking and living about practical life take over. But Uttara Darshan remained. Nobody else can give you. You can't work at 7-Eleven to get what Uttara Darshan can give you. You can't work for Donald Trump to get what Uttara Darshan can give you. You just can't get it from anywhere except from the Uttara Darshan of the Veda. So what is it? It's about how to perceive reality accurately and correctly. Now, maybe science can give you that, but science is always empirical. So it's only going to be about the empirical component of reality. But the Vedic Darshan can give you the super empirical, which explains the empirical. So that's why its values remained. So while the value of the Purva Darshan fell off because it could be replaced by other ways of living, the value of the Uttara Darshan remains constant. So these days, Purva Darshan is not very well respected or popular, although you'll still see it's ingrained in Indian culture, in the Brahmanical caste and the like occupational priests who actually do rituals for people and things like that, and the kind of importance that they still lingeringly have in that society. So it's the Uttara school that focuses on three super beings who are beyond the conventional gods. That's Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. This is important for you to understand. If you look at it one way, if you look at the Vedas through the Purva Darshan, then Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are three really powerful gods, but they don't really get their hands that dirty. They're kind of hands-off gods. So although they're very powerful, they don't really do that much. That's the Purva take on Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The Uttara take on Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva is these are not gods. These are beings that are beyond the gods. And that's why they don't get their hands involved in the affairs that the gods are involved with. And also Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom, takes a high role in Uttara school. So even though the Purva Darshan doesn't really give that much of a special place to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, they do appear in the Purva-oriented texts, and they have more conventional roles, like Rudra is just a dangerous character that destroys things, and Brahma is the procreative force. He's good for sex and making babies, and Vishnu is the ability to be anywhere. So he's the ability to move, right? So this is the flavor that Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva. The Purva Darshan only sees that aspect of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And in the Nakshatras, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva function mostly in that role, in that simplified role. But we're talking about darshan, which is an interesting word. Darshan means how something is seen. So if you have an Uttara Darshan, if you have an interest in the higher vision, you can see Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva functioning in their higher forms in the Nakshatras. And that's actually what I intend to kind of teach in the next couple of sessions that we do. Not just the simple. I will also teach you the simple stuff about Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva and the Nakshatra, but I'll also show you the deeper stuff. Okay, so I'm actually going to show you how Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva actually are special in the Nakshatra wheel because they all possess more than one Nakshatra. Okay. All right. That's the intro. I think I'll also, maybe if we don't have any questions, I can throw one or two more things in, but let's see if you got questions or statements. Let's see what we got here. Let's see. Let's start with, let's see where I'm going to start. Measuring your actions in this life. I don't know what that means. Let's go here. It sounds, here Riku says, it sounds like Uttara is misleading for getting successful. Now you see, Uttara Darshan doesn't have its eyes on that prize. It's the Purva Darshan which has its eyes on the prize. And if you remember the 4 goals of life, the first couple of them are Kama, Artha. Kama is just pleasure, and Artha means getting the stuff, acquiring the stuff that you need for pleasure, money and resources. So those are the prizes that the Karma Darshan has their eyes on. So what would be misleading for you, like for example, if I'm a Hare Krishna and you're a Karmi, and you just want to be rich, and I'm a Hare Krishna and I'm all about Krishna, for me to come up to you and say, hey, here's this mantra of Krishna, chant it and you'll be rich, that's misleading. Okay? For me to tell you, follow this path that's a path applicable to Uttara Darshan, like renounce your house, give your house to my temple, and you'll become, and your material desires will be filled. That will be misleading. So Uttara Darshan is actually not misleading at all. Uttara Darshan is about people want to perceive, to not just understand, but to actually perceive God, to actually perceive reality as it is. And they therefore live in certain ways and do certain things and focus on certain things. It's not misleading to material success because they actually they're not interested in material success. They're interested in those other goals, which are primarily moksha. Okay. So I wouldn't say Uttara is misleading for success. Uttara is not about success. It's misleading if somebody presents Uttara religions and philosophies to you as if it was good for material success. Hi, Liz. What about Satyabhishek? What about Satyabhishek? Satyabhishek belongs to Varuna. Varuna is very similar to Vishnu in a physical sense. And I explained why about Satyabhishek. Vishnu is the god that's the substance of everything. So he's the enveloper, the container of everything. And Varuna is a smaller subset of that same kind of principle. He's the enveloper of everything physical. So Varuna is like the Vishnu of the Karma Darshan. Now, Ayush Kansal wants to put it in the context of chakras. So it's like all the chakras are like Purva part, but Sahasra is only Uttara part. I think you'd get your Uttara Darshan would start a bit lower than Sahasra. Yeah, and I don't know, but it sounds like it's an interesting analogy. Maybe you're crossing the line here to get to Uttara from the heart up. Krishna Kumar. Is Dhumvati really the deed of Mool Nakshatra? That's correct, but don't get confused about names. Okay? One person has many names. I have many names. So like if somebody says, wait, you're Vic, but there's this other guy named Vic Takara. That would be silly, right? Everybody would know it. So same way, it's like if you say, wait, Dhumvati is the goddess of Mool Nakshatra. I thought it was Nirti. Or Kali. Somebody else said it's Kali. These are all the same person with just different names for the same person. Greedy Rick. So is Tantra Mantra Yantra considered Purva? No, Tantra Mantra Yantra is a tra. It's a machine or a tool. So it depends on what you're using your tool for. So there's Tantra for Purva and there's Tantra for Uttara as well. Tantra means the technique. So there's techniques for Purva interests. Like Kama Sutra is a Tantra for sex. But Archan Padati is a Tantra for Upasana Kant. like how you do puja and worship is a tantra for something even higher than Uttara Darshan, which is the Bhakti Darshan. So tantras, mantras, yantras, they can be utilized by both schools. But you're correct there in the second half of your thing, where like doing certain rituals with certain gods to make material things happen, that's the Purva school. And it's practically absent from the Uttara school. Sun is giving an interesting point. Sun wants everything to be spiritual. So this person named Sun says, material things were never attached to the soul, which worship for enlightenment. So these nakshatras must be most enlightening because their deities are supreme. No, it's not really like that. I'm sorry. The soul gets interest in material things. That's why the soul develops a mind and a body and material senses. And the gods are the ones that help the soul interact with these things. And it's not all about enlightenment. Or you can say that enlightenment means different things to different people. It's enlightening to figure out what the taste of that strawberry donut is. To experience it directly and have samadhi with the strawberry donut. That would be the kamika's supreme enlightenment. But don't go on this thing of like, if it's not moksha, it's not spiritual. There's all different paths in Vedic culture. And all of them gradually lead the practitioner to the ultimate destination. But they don't always go straight there. Atharva Chaudhary says, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva are just like the three prongs of the trident, separate but attached. Sure, that's very, very true. However, this trident has more than three prongs. If you think about it carefully, all the gods are different manifestations of one singular underlying principle called Brahman. Om Namo Shivaya. You know what's interesting? I went to a restaurant today for lunch, a little different than usual, and it was an Indian restaurant, of course. I mean, I'm like that, and I'll you'll find me at an Indian restaurant or an Italian restaurant, not much else. But at the cash register, there was like written in Hindi script in a Devanagari. It said Namo Shivaya. So just like Liz Perez says here, Om Namah Shivaya. If Vishnu is consciousness, then what does Shiva represent? So we'll talk about this, okay? We'll talk about what these three are, but basically Vishnu is Sattva Guna, and Rudra or Shiva is Tamaguna, and Brahma is Rajaguna. And so the Sattva Guna is the Sat, or the substance of what's real. The Tamaguna is how that reality can be erased, and then the Rajaguna or Brahma is how that reality can be redrawn, how that erased thing can be redrawn. So that's what Shiva and Brahma are different functions of Vishnu in a extrinsic or external or material world, where they function to cycle the state that Vishnu is in. Vishnu is the existence itself, and Shiva and Brahma are the aspects of Vishnu that are cycling it, so that it can go out and back in because it's imperfect and people are looking for new versions of it. Which nakshatra, what do we got? Which nakshatra would you say is the throat chakra? I don't know enough about chakras. I guess Vishaka and Jeshta wouldn't be a good one to have. I don't know how to answer this question. Which god should I pray? This is also a question you shouldn't ask. You should think. This guy, Vic, just told me that the Vedic culture is not monolithic. So why would you ask me to tell you what god you should pray? like as if there's an answer. You have to figure out what you want. What's the most pressing thing that you want? And then pray or try to commune with it, try to understand, try to get on the level with, try to cooperate with the God and goddess who are associated with that thing that you're interested in. And then you try to elevate your interest gradually. When you find out that you got this result and you still feel bored, then you'll try to evolve your interest and you'll come up to another level of wanting something else, and you seek that God's benediction for that, and then you get that and you still feel bored. So gradually, that's how the paths lead you up to the ultimate moksha. So don't just try to think, what God should I pray? Mula, Dhumvati, and Ketu are all interlinked or related to one another. Sure, they all have a similar theme. Okay. So I'll wrap up by telling you something interesting. Let me see what else is in my book here. Oh my God, I hope I'm on screen and not behind my book. All right, let me wrap up by telling you something interesting. And let me first just check and see what I got written next. Yeah, let me tell you what's interesting. Typically speaking, if you have 27 nakshatras, and Brahma has 1, and that would be? Anybody know? Brahma's nakshatra? Rohini, very good. Rakesh. Rohini. Then Vishnu, typically speaking, has 1 nakshatra. Do you know which one that one is? Shravana. Riku. You said Abhijit for Brahma. Shravana is Vishnu. Vishnu is Shravana. Abhijit is Brahma, but Abhijit's not a 27 ecliptic nakshatra. Abhijit is a North Star, North Pole. Shiva is not Hasta. Hasta is Savitu. Well, anybody know Shiva's nakshatra? He's not going to be called Shiva either. He's not called Shiva. We'll talk about this tomorrow, next time we do this, next week. He's not even called Shiva here. It's called Rudra. And it's so easy to remember. Rudra, Ardra. Ardra means the place that Rudra is in. Okay. Difference between Rudra and Shiva is simply Shiva is Uttara Darshan and Rudra is Purva Darshan. So the first or initial vision of Shiva, or of this aspect of Vishnu, is the destroyer Rudra, the Tamaguna. But the Uttara Darshan of Shiva is after Shiva learns yoga and gains control of his emotions and becomes Shiva, or blessed and peaceful. So I get in this question again. Are Varuna and Indra in conflict with one another? Just look back in the series when we were talking about Varuna and Indra. But basically the answer is no. Varuna is a bit above that. Varuna is actually quite detached. I wish I was detached as Varuna. I have Rahu in Satabhishak. So maybe there's potential for me to be like that, but it's kind of not so steady. But Varuna is real detached. He's just like, you go ahead. You be king. Yeah. I'm going to ignore some of these questions, which are questions that I've just already dealt with in the other classes. So I want to tell you now. So those are the 3 basics, right? Vishnu is Shravana, Rudra is Ardra, and Brahma is Rohini. But if you think carefully with the eye of Uttara Darshan, you'll see that, okay, for Brahma also has Abhijit, so Brahma's got 2 nakshatras. And then Vishnu those three nakshatras, the two nakshatras on either side of Shravana, are also his. And we'll talk about that. So that would be Dhanishta or Shravishta and Uttarashada. And then Shiva. And then Shiva is got, I think Shiva's got like many, because Shiva then also has Rudrani. So he's got Mula. Mula is Rudrani. Ardra is Rudra. And then they both have the Sheshanag avatar of Shiva, which is the Bhadrapadas. So Shiva's got 4. Vishnu's got 3. The way I see it, Shiva's got 4 nakshatras. Vishnu's got 3, and Brahma 2. And Indra has 1.5. Okay? Vishal, you got that wrong. Just Vishal says you have to decide if you're going to adhere to the tropical or sidereal zodiac, because the nakshatra will be different depending on what zodiac you choose. It's incorrect. The nakshatras are stars. They're not part of the zodiac. That's the most important thing for you to understand on this topic. The stars are not part of the zodiac. The zodiac is the division of the sun's path relative to the Earth's equator. And the nakshatras are separate. So whether you're using a tropical or sidereal zodiac, the nakshatras are the stars. They're always sidereal. So you don't, whether you use, that's irrelevant. All right, guys. I am going to see you next week when we're going to talk about Brahmas. Let's see, how much do we have to say about Brahma? Yeah, quite a bit, and it's interesting. So next week we'll do Brahma's nakshatras and some of his stories. Thanks to all for attending.